Hello, everybody. Welcome to our final lecture, Conflict in Teams. This is something that I like to save to the end of the semester because you've probably experienced, maybe not overt conflict. Maybe there's not been, what we think of as conflict is disagreeing and arguing and yelling and all of those sort of things. But sometimes there's a little bit of tension that has happened at some point during the semester. And I like to kind of wrap up the semester with this conflict lecture here. So one of the things that we've talked about in some of the other lectures is this idea of values, something that's really deeply intrinsic to me, right? It can be a number of different things, but a lot of times we've been raised with it, or we've had a fundamental life shift for some reason, and that has formed these values. And it's difficult to argue with someone's values. If someone has an intrinsic political belief, it's very difficult to get them to change just because you think they should, or because you've made a compelling argument. Even a compelling argument will not often be that the cause of someone shifting their values. These are the most difficult types of conflicts to resolve. It's not always bad, right? Conflict is something that it can improve a situation. Sometimes there's just this percolating and underlying tension, and conflict will allows that to come to the top. Otherwise it festers, right? This allows us to get it all out, and we can continue to move forward in a very healthy way. One of the things that I've also found is that conflict can oftentimes provide some innovation, because now we're really forced to think about different things. Conflict can also help us look at others' viewpoints. It can help us be more productive. It can do a lot of different things for a group. So don't discount conflict. In fact, if there's never any sort of disagreeing, if there's never disagreements, not disagreements that necessarily seem like they are contentious and overtly creating some issues in the team. But if there's never any of that, you need to step back and ask yourself, are we in a situation of just groupthink? So that's something that, a group that never has any disagreements need to consider so they can continue moving forward and being quite productive. So I think this is kind of interesting. We've all had these individuals that for one reason or another, someone just rubbed you the wrong way, and it wasn't that they necessarily did anything, or maybe you've rubbed someone the wrong way. You don't know why you don't care for the person. It's really sort of this interesting idea that this can sometimes happen. We know that there is a science to this as well, really, the pheromones and things like that. But sometimes there's just ideologically an individual that we just cannot stand behind. And it's not because they've even talked about their fundamental values or their belief systems, or just, how they think or approach life. We just don't care for them. So let's kind of and that just comes down to basic personality types. So, as we've seen in the very first lecture versus second lecture, I don't quite remember, we talked about the DISC profiles. We talked about personalities, and there's these four different types of personalities that were identified more than 2,000 years ago that are quite interesting, that we'll jump into and we'll talk about. I'm going to pop down here and really talk about these individually because I think that they are something to consider. So if these sanguines, right, we have this idea of this archetype here, this Sam, right? You can't imagine coming into conflict with him. He's wonderful. He's the center of attention. However, with this type of person, sometimes you represent competition to them, particularly if you are also outgoing, or if you have fantastic ideas, you're highly productive, people are giving you lots of compliments, recognizing you, etc. So that can happen from Sam's perspective. But on your perspective, perhaps you may get tired of this kind of personality, right? Maybe you're a more low-key personality, and these people who have constant need to be bigger than life, entertaining, and all of those sort of things, they can become somewhat tiring to you. A lot of times these people don't seem to know when to turn it off, and it's a balance that they lack, is this ability to have fun, be fun, kind of be the life of the party, but then also know when to temper it and get some work done. So that can be the problem. And this type of personality is one of the things that will happen here is this type of personality, they can infringe on your privacy. Nothing seems to be off limits to them, and sometimes in the way that they joke or the way they approach things. So, you have to kind of help that person balance and say, okay, that's awesome. Let's get down to work. And then I'd love to hear more about that movie or what's going on. You kind of have to be careful in the way that you approach this person because, they can also get their feelings hurt or be upset when someone tries to really put some guardrails around them. Okay, what kind of needs will he have? Well, he needs attention. This is the type of person who needs your attention. It doesn't cost anything to give attention. He wants approval, he wants affirmation, he wants compliments. They want you to think that they're funny. But being very consistent in the way that you approach this type of individual is very important. Maybe you get this a situation where you kind of say, hey, on our agenda, the first 10 minutes we're gonna kind of chit chat and get to know one another, and you give that consistency, and then you provide that break and say, okay, now it's time to get down to work, and we got to set the joking and the storytelling aside. That is typically how you would handle this personality. Okay, what about melancholy Mary? Well, we've all seen this in one type of a situation or another. She works hard. She's organized. She doesn't slack on the responsibilities, which makes it hard to be mad at her. However, she's a perfectionist. And really, once that apple cart is upset, once that perfection is challenged, once something doesn't quite go her way, then she gets upset, right? If you're not as on task, orderly, disciplined, and on target as she is, then she can turn very negative. And so this is the downside to having these individuals on the team. They are wonderful and you want to have them because a lot of times they are, they tend to be the workhorse of the team and they are going to make it shine. They're going to give it a little something extra, but they can be easily, have their feelings hurt. They're very sensitive. And they don't like having anybody joke at their expense because they internalize it and they take it personally. And they don't let that go very easily. So one of the things that you can do is provide real structure to your meetings. You can make sure that you are giving her very specific tasks versus the entire scope of the project. Maybe what you do is you give her very specific tasks, and then at the end of the project, you say, "We really need you to make us shine. We really need you to make us look good." So then she's highly focused on individual pieces, and then at the end feels like she's been able to contribute to the project as a whole. Oftentimes this individual needs some time to work and have alone time and all of that. So you'll need to give her time to break off, do that work, and come back. And then she wants to wow you with all the different things that she's done. They can get depressed, right? I mean, they were very sort of isolated, alone. I can do this on my own type of worker. And when they're in this sort of group setting, sometimes, they're the ones fulfilling their type A and their perfectionistic attitude on their own, but when a group, sometimes they don't feel like that's met, and that can kind of make them what we consider this melancholy. Okay, Carl Clark here, right? He is this individual. He's so focused on your team's goals that you expect that he'll be easy to work with, right? He, however, believes that he is right. He doesn't really want to hear other people's opinions and ideas. And it's one of those types of things when I tell people you're arguing with someone's truth. And for Carl, everything is his truth, right? He believes that he's so right and he's so entrenched in that, entrenched in those ideas that he doesn't want to see anybody else's ideas. And therefore, it's not that he's just being blatantly rude by not considering your ideas. He truly believes that this is the right path. And he's so singularly focused that sometimes other people feel like that he is inflexible. He wants you to work as hard as he does, and he will work hard. But the problem is that if the group as a whole has some sort of disagreement or feels like that he is not taking the right path, he will take that very, very personally, and he will not stop until he wins an argument. He will not let that go. So he's very, very focused, but you have to harness that in such a way that you make him feel like something is his idea. That way he will champion that idea as well. Okay, he's very confident. He wouldn't seem like that he would have any needs. He wants to succeed. He is, The challenge is, of course, he can ruffle feathers. He may be the type of person who's very blunt with other members of the team. That's not any good. We need to bring it up. And it feels very hurtful. So one of the things is to reminding folks on the team that, this is his personality. He doesn't mean it. He's just a perfectionist. He wants to get it done. And perhaps he just lacks a little bit of the bedside manner that he should have in order to be, really the best team player. Sometimes you might have to have a real strong personality confront Carl. Okay, Fran. What about Fran? She's laid back and easy to get along with, right? She's well balanced. She just is easy to get along with. She's so easygoing. Where's the problem here with somebody? She's so easygoing. Sometimes she just lets everybody else do it. And that easygoingness can sometimes slip into laziness. She seeks peace, but she's also not willing to put herself out there real far. So sometimes you have to be very specific with them. She's not going to volunteer. She's not going to stand up and raise her hand and say, I'll take part A, you take part B, whatever. You're going to have to physically assign her what that is and give her those expectations, because otherwise she just will be very even-keeled. She won't challenge you or create conflict when you do that. Don't get argumentative with her, though. She wants to keep the peace, and she'll shut down, perhaps walk out, or not be able to complete and do anything. Don't get argumentative. You need to build her up. Fran, you're amazing at doing this, and I know that, you'd be just awesome. What do you think about taking on this part of the project and completing it? You build her up, let her take that on. You're not doing anything else. You need to do this. There's two very different approaches. She may have some different issues, and she'd rather be dissatisfied than risk a conflict. So someone else needs to take notice of that and make sure that she's getting her voice heard. Or if she trusts someone, she's able to express that to them, and then that person is able to express those viewpoints to help her be heard as well. Okay, what are some of the dreaded personality types, right? There's different temperaments, there's different things that happen, but here are some of the dreaded personality types that we find both in work and in school projects, and you will see that these are accurate. Okay, so your worst enemy, right? This is your worst enemy. They can take the all sorts of different types of things. What is a worst enemy? Well, a worst enemy, there's an example here of Andrea never had a worst enemy till she began working as a trainee for a telephone company. Took her about 3 months to catch on. This woman started making fun of me to other trainees behind my back. I tried to laugh it off. But when I found out she told our supervisor I wasn't working out, I knew I had to do something to defend myself. The supervisor asked me how committed I was to my job, why I was late, and why I left earlier, and that none of that was even true. Her solution was to start to keep good records. I told the supervisor I hadn't left early, but I didn't know if she believed me. From then on, I kept very detailed records on my calendar. I sent memos about projects. Next time I talked with my supervisor, I was armed. Sometimes these people, they are so unhappy in other parts of their lives, they want to make other people as miserable as they are, right? Misery loves company. So this worst enemy can oftentimes target that individual that they think might have the possibility to succeed in areas where they don't, and undermine them, and consistently and repetitively throw them under the bus and try to make their lives miserable, try to get other people turned against them, try to get the boss turned against them, try to make them look incompetent. That is the worst enemy behavior. Okay. Worst enemies are deceivers, right? One approach is you can confront them. If you decide to, you've got to be specific. You can't just be like, hey, I feel like you're doing this. You've got to say, like, you did this, and you did this, and you did this, and you did this, and you've got to go armed. Your preparation is your best ammunition against someone with this type of personality. Include memos. Make sure that you're covering yourself with documentation. Don't go over your enemy's head. Go directly to them. That way they understand what is potentially happening if that type of behavior continues. It is unfortunate, but if they feel as though that they could potentially be really damaged, they'll either make it worse to try to kind of rise to your, to see your bet, if you will, or they will step back and unfortunately probably shift the focus to someone else. So it can go one of two ways, and that's something that you need to be prepared with if you do confront that type of behavior. Okay, what about the bomb? The bomb, we've known this. You've worked on enough group projects by now that you know that there's bound to be somebody who doesn't carry their weight. I mean, these are the people that you're just like, I'm having to drag you along. You're going to see this in work. You're going to see this everywhere. We always like to say these people ultimately seal their own fate, and they do, but it doesn't help the folks in between that they're having to cover for them, So here's a situation that I'll read out to you. Megan hated group papers and projects in high school. I always ended up doing the whole thing, or I got a lower grade because my partner didn't do her end. She didn't think she'd have an easy adjustment working on a team of librarians in a city library. After a week in the job, Megan recognized the same bum type personality in one of her team members, Robert. Luckily, she discovered her employers already had a built-in way to handle that problem. They've already recognized it. See, this is where they tend to seal their fate. We all signed a contract that included a team clause saying they were committed to working together as a team and sharing responsibilities. That's like a charter. Our team leader had us come up with a list of things we were expecting from each other. One of the expectations was that everybody would do his share. So when Robert didn't, we all felt it. First, we all asked him how we could help him make his commitment. When we did his work for him sometimes, but we didn't cover for him. And after a while, he was let go. So this is the kind of person that you need to just bide your time, document, and then other people will start to see this as well. This is not somebody that can hide from administration and managers for very long. So if you have a bum as a boss, that is an entirely different situation, certainly. Okay, the child. This person is not grown up to be professional, right? They bring personal problems to the office. They're going to waste your time with all the sort of details. Things are wildly inappropriate to be talking about at work. And our feelings are so easily hurt, you may be afraid to tell her. So how do you handle the child? Well, you can't tell her exactly what you think, but what you can do is you can kind of set aside some time with her. That way you can manage your own internal responses to it and just say, oh my gosh, that sounds like such an interesting story. I am on a deadline here. Can I catch up with you at lunch or something like that? And make that time with her. And you're going to find that if you give her the time to talk to you and you set that aside, then she'll drain you less than she is by continuously drawing on you throughout the day or the week. So here we go. Gretchen had a child on her shift in retail sales. Every free moment, the other woman latched onto Gretchen to pour her out her latest personal trauma. We've been there, right? I couldn't just stop and tell her to stop talking to me. So I started offering her other times. Gretchen tried to word her request politely and warmly. So we don't miss our customer. Let's save our talk for the next break. Or I'd love to hear about this, but I'm afraid I won't be able to focus. Would you like to go out to lunch Friday and tell me about it then? You have to be careful not to hurt their feelings. And by giving them something that they feel like is a very specific part of your time, then that is something that will placate them. Okay, the tattletale. What is the tattletale? The tattletale loves to be the bearer of juicy news, right? They thrive on the power of having knowledge and then sharing that knowledge and lording it over others, right? One of the best things, the tattletale things like, you don't know about this? I do. We all know somebody like that. If they're spreading information about you, then you know not to tell them anything, right? You should always question, why or do you feel so comfortable telling this to me? Because likely they're also saying things about you to other people as well. If he chooses to be a gossip about you to other people, be polite, but don't buy into the revelation. Do not add to the rhetoric. Don't add to the conversation, because the next thing will be that person going out and saying, they also said this and added to it. You become fuel for the fire and you become additional fodder for gossip. Okay, so what about, we've got to choose our battles carefully. I know we've heard this our entire life, but it's none truer in business. You've got to be able to say, if I've got one battle that I would die on a hill for, is this it? Would I lose my job over it? And you've got to go to that level of extremes every time and feel how far you're willing to go with something. If you're willing to lose your job or quit over it, either be fired or quit over something, it's a battle worth picking. If you're not, then you have to be realistic. So if you're not willing to lose your job, you're not willing to be fired, and someone could not be injured, then you have to consider whether it's a battle that you want to continue to pick. So be careful, think through it, take that step back, take 5 minutes, an hour, a day, whatever, and consider, is it worth it? Is it okay just to let people feel like they've won? A lot of times in the long run, it's really okay. And here's the deal. They may have won, but in the end, just winning one battle is not winning the war. Okay, employers do not put up with in-house fighting. I will tell you that. Save your complaints. The perpetual complainer, even if they're justified, even if it's right, creates more problems. It just, the management just doesn't want to hear everything. They want to see people who can resolve their own problems. And that also means someone who knows when to pick their battles. So while there may be a problem person, again, you let that situation work itself out, because it absolutely will, just as if we talked about before. These people tend to seal their own fate. Let it work itself out. You be the team player, the positive person, and pick a battle. Am I willing to be fired? Am I willing to quit? Or is someone going to be hurt by this? And outside of that, you really need to be careful about deciding and then going to your supervisor for continuous complaints about an individual or something at work. Okay. Plan your fights. This is something that people don't often do. This is what I was telling you. Take an hour, take a day, think through your fights. A lot of us get really flustered, tongue-tied, upset when conflict comes to us in a very aggressive manner. The good things that we had in our minds and all the reasons why we're upset about it kind of fly out, and we start just kind of, going all over the place with a very unstructured argument. If you have time to settle down, you have time to really think through your argument, you have time to consider what that conversation might look like, you can be reasonable, you can be calm, and you can continue to work through the points and pieces of your argument. When you let yourself get out of control, when you let yourself get emotional, you'll never win the argument, even if you've touched on these. People are going to see that. However, if the other person is somewhat out of control and emotional and you remain calm, you're automatically going to come out on top, because they're going to see that for what that is. This person seems emotional, out of control, anger, all of these sort of things. This other person seems very reasonable, so they must have some very strong valid points, because they're not becoming emotional about it. All right, and finally, whenever possible, give the other person a way out. People make mistakes. People feel trapped. And if you want to continue that working relationship with that person, give them a way out of the argument. Give them a chance to win, succeed, or hop out in a way that does not feel punitive. It does not feel demeaning or demoralizing in any way. Give them an opportunity to kind of gracefully back out of that conversation. So this is very important, and it's key to managing politics at an organization. Well, this has just been a little bit of the information that I wanted to share with you on the conflict management for this particular course. I appreciate it if you've made it through most of these videos. It's been a spectacular class, and I've enjoyed working with each of you, and I hope that I see you in a future class. Bye, guys.